My name is Athena, and I'm a host of a knitting podcast here in this channel called Seedling Stitch. And in my main podcast, I always talk a lot about some Japanese knitting books I have and some Japanese patterns that I have followed. And I'm a big fan of Japanese knitting, and there is a huge amount of very interesting designs in the Japanese world, and I just want to share my passion towards Japanese knitting with the knitter all around the world. And actually, you don't have to be able to read Japanese to use their patterns, because one feature they have is that they use extensively the charts and symbols. And so if you just learn their charts and symbols and a few words of Japanese, you will be able to follow along most of their patterns. And in this series of mini lessons, I'm going to walk you through one Japanese pattern each time. And hopefully I'm going to select more and more difficult patterns as we progress through this series. But I'm trying to design these mini lessons as standalone as possible so that you can just follow the mini lesson with the pattern of your interest, and you'll be able to pick up some of the Japanese knitting symbols as we go. And today I'm going to show you how to knit this cute chunky rib hat with the pom-pom. And this is a free Japanese knitting pattern. I have linked the download link below in the description, and I'm going to walk you through this pattern. So let's dive into my computer screen and I'll explain that. Before we start explaining the pattern, I'd like to point you to a few resources that I have made. The first one is this spreadsheet that I'm making. I'm making this spreadsheet to explain all the Japanese knitting symbols, and I'm categorizing them by type, and I put the symbols here. I put the Japanese for these stitches and the English abbreviations and the English explanation for each of these symbols. And as we go through the series, I'll put all the symbols that we have seen in the pattern to this spreadsheet. So we will learn that as we go. And also I have put some explanation for the instructional tests, like the Japanese characters for the yarn, needle, gauge, stitch, roll, and such. Just these common characters that you might find useful. And also I have linked you to a printable bookmark that I have made. You can download this for free, where I have made this chart for Japanese needle size against the US needle size and the needle size in millimeters. And also I have put in another chart for the Japanese yarn size, which is this chart. In the Japanese, they call the different weight with different characters, so you might find that useful as well. And I've also put in like the general knitting needle sizes that you would want to use for each of these weight of yarn, and also the stitch gauge for using these weight of yarn. And you can get that for free, and you can download this for your own reference. And today we're going to look at this knitted rib cap with chunky weight yarn, and you can download the PDF from this link, or I'm also going to just put this link in below so that if you have trouble finding this point, you can just use the link below. And after you click this, it will get you through a PDF pattern for this hat. And let's look at this pattern. So all the Japanese patterns are constructed as so. So at the top left, you have a picture of this pattern, and then you have some basic information about this pattern and a few words for the instructions. And actually these aren't very important because all the information should be charted below. And here it's schematics of the pattern, just showing you the measurements and how many stitches you need to cast on and what needle size you would use. and then there will be a knitting chart where it shows you what stitch and technique you should use at each row. So let's go back to the top. So first, it tells you what yarn you should use. This 2 character means the yarn, and I have listed this in my spreadsheet. This is the yarn, and it's using the Grandier yarn, and you can search, and it's also linked in the pattern page. You can click that to go check the yarn page, or you can search that in Ravelry if you are more comfortable reading the English. And in this yarn information page, it says it's of this type, and just looking at my yarn weight spreadsheet, and this is actually the DK weight, but for some reason in Ravelry it's saying it's an RN weight, but anyway, this is the yarn that it uses, and you don't have to get the same yarn. You can just get a yarn with a similar weight according to the needle size. And the needle size, this character, as I said last time, this character means needle, especially like this cross with the long vertical line. It signifies a needle, and I've also put that in my knitting database. This character means needle, and the used needle is 2 pieces of the number 12 needle. This character means the needle size, and this is the Japanese needle size chart. The number 12 needle corresponds to 5.7 millimeter, and we don't have that exact same size in the US, so you can choose 5.5 or 6, or maybe 5.75 if you have it, to just get a close match to this size. The Japanese needle size are structured a bit differently. Like between each size, there is a 0.3 millimeter increase, whereas in the US, usually the increase is by a half or by a quarter millimeter. And also the Japanese needle size, the largest size will just be size 15, which goes to 6.6 millimeter, and any needle size above that, the Japanese instruction will just say 7 millimeter or 8 millimeter, and that unit here will just be milli, and which means millimeter. So pay attention to the unit after the number. So if it's this character, it means size. Like if it's 7 and then this character, it means the size 7 needle. And if it's 7 and then these 2 characters, it means 7 millimeter needle. So you have to pay attention to which character is after the number. So this time it's using the size 12, and in my last mini lesson it's actually using a 5 millimeter needle instead of a size 5 needle. So just be careful to look at the unit for the needle. And then this is the measurements, and it's just saying the depth of the pattern is 26 centimeter, and the circumference of the head is 56 centimeter. And these information are all in the schematics below, so that's not very important. And this is for gauge, a 10 centimeter square, and it uses 16 stitches times 17 rows. This character is stitch, and this character is rows. And I have also put that in my Japanese knitting database. And here this just means a 2x2 rib. So 2, and this character is stitch, and then this gomu means rib. And so it's just saying in a 2x2 ribbing pattern, you are going to have a gauge of 16 stitch times 17 rows on a 10 centimeter square. And then in this part, it's just some instructional tests. Just a straight translation is saying you just cast on as you usually do, and then knit with 2 by 2 ribs. And then on the row 43, you are going to do some decreases, and finally you thread your yarn through the all the stitches. And this is important information. This says you are going to knit 2 strands together. So yeah, this is something that you sort of have to know beforehand, and I'm glad I'm here to translate that. And then let's look at the schematics. And this so this hat is knitted in the round, but here in the schematics it's showing you an opened pattern of this piece. And when it's open, it has a shape like this. And you start by making 90 stitches. Remember, this character means stitches. And this 90 stitches corresponds to 56 centimeter. So in Japanese knitting patterns, the unit for length they use is usually centimeter, denoted by this C here. And this arrow shows you the knitting direction, so you are knitting bottom up. And you knit 42 rows in this 2 by 2 rib with a size 12 needle, and that will be 24.5 centimeters. So you knit until that, and then the rest 2 rows, remember this character means rows, the rest 2 rows you are going to do some decreases. That's why causing the zigzag shape, and that 2 rows corresponds to 1.5 centimeters. And finally there will be 46 stitches left on your needle, and you will thread your yarn through all these 46 stitches and pull tight to finish the crown of the hat. And together the depth of the hat will be 26 centimeters. It's all in the schematics. And let's look at the pattern. Here it's telling you all the blank squares equals to the this symbol, which means a regular knit stitch. And this symbol, you can find that in my knitting symbol chart. Just a vertical line means knit, and a horizontal line means purl. So it's quite intuitive, because when you're knit, you are pushing your needle to the front vertically, and then when you purl, you sort of is inserting your needle horizontally. So that's how I remember these symbols. And on the first row, which is the cast on row, you cast on 90 stitches. And on the second row, you knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. So since you are knitting in the round, you are just going to knit. You're just going to read the chart from the beginning for each row. So you are not knitting. You are always knitting on the right side. So you're just always reading this chart from the right to the left. So you knit 2, purl 2, and then you just keep knitting this 2 by 2 ribs until you have reached 40, 41. You have reached row 42. And then on row 43, you are going to do some decreases. And this time it's good that we are learning how to read the Japanese decreasing symbols. So there are 2 types. One is this symbol, and the other is this symbol. So this symbol is like a right stitch covering a left stitch, and intuitively that just should be the right stitch covering left stitch, sort of decreasing stitch, and that will be SSK. I have listed that. So that will be the SSK stitch or slip slip knit, so that you can decrease one stitch and having the right stitch on top of your left stitch. And that you can see in the chart, there is already a blank here, so you have already decreased by one stitch. And then when you go to these two stitches, you are going to do a knit two together. So you can see the left stick is covering the right stick. And to do this sort of decrease, you are going to K2 together. So for this symbol, you are going to knit two together. It's another type of decreasing. So these two are essentially the most important decreasing stitches, and you're going to use that for this hat. So you do a bunch of decreases according to the charts. So on this row, you are decreasing one stitch every 2 stitches. And on the next row, you have already decreased a bunch of stitches, and now there should be like almost half of the stitches left. And I think they didn't decrease for the first and the last stitches, and that's why they end up having 46 stitches on the needle. And after this, you will just thread the yarn through all these remaining stitches. And this is telling you how to finish off this pattern. So you will finish by threading the yarn and pull tight, and you will make a 9 centimeter diameter pom-pom here and attach to the top of the hat. So that will just be this pattern. I hope you have enjoyed my explanation on this pom-pom hat pattern. If you decide to knit this pattern, please post some pictures on Ravelry or on Instagram. I'm doing this knit along, Japanese knitting knit along on Instagram with the hashtag Japanese Knitting KAL. So if you knit some of the patterns from my Japanese knitting mini lessons, please use this hashtag and add me at SD_Athena so that I can feature your pictures on my series. If you enjoyed my mini lessons, please consider support me on Ko-fi.com. You can buy me a coffee just to support my work so that I can keep creating more contents like this. And also, I haven't decided yet what pattern I should walk through in my next mini lessons. So if you have some suggestions, you can leave your comment in below. Let me know what style you want to do. Like, do you want to do some cable patterns, or do you want to do some lacy patterns, or you like just more basic patterns? And also, let me know what kind of garments you want to make. Do you want to make accessories like shawl or socks? Maybe we can do socks. And just leave a comment. Let me know what type of pattern you will be interested in, and I'll try to find that in the Japanese pattern database, and I'll walk you through that pattern for you in my next mini lessons. And a little digress from the mini lessons, I know this video will come out on the Mother's Day, so for those who celebrate the Mother's Day, Happy Mother's Day, and to all the mothers, and also to my own mom, 妈妈母亲节快乐，我爱你。Also to my best friends, 毛毛, happy birthday. And that will be all for this mini lesson. And happy knitting, and until next time, see you.